Hi everyone, I appreciate y'all taking some time to watch today's video. In today's video, I want to go over my approach that I'm planning on doing this year during the pre-spawn and some of those baits that I'm planning on kind of using as we're coming out of this winter transition into our pre-spawn season and then getting ready to head towards the spawn. So, and specifically talking about it, my big bait or big swim bait approach to the pre-spawn, because I really want to utilize this time period to really try to target my new personal best. So I'm looking for something bigger than a 6.5, 6.5 pound largemouth. So we'll see if I can get it during the pre-spawn. All right, let's dive right into the baits, and I'm going to kind of take this approach of when the water is still cooler on the colder side. Our water temperature here ranges anywhere from, probably the low mid 40s to the upper 40s right now. I haven't really been hearing much chatter about us hitting the 50-degree mark yet. But once we hit that 50-degree mark, we'll really be starting to get into the pre-spawn. And, once we get into early April, we'll start seeing those smallmouths start getting ready to hit the spawn. They'll probably be spawning in the first of April, with depending on if the new or the full moon ends up hitting first, but definitely be seeing the smallmouth hit first here. All right, so let's take this, so coming straight out of winter, as to what I'm going to be doing, and we'll talk about the baits first, and then we'll talk about some of the areas that I plan on using for these different methods. All right, so number one, going out of the winter, is going to be really two baits primarily. I am going to be having, glides and cranks and things like that on the boat, but the main method leaving winter that I'm going to be targeting a lot of fish with is going to be the Alabama rig. As you all have seen in some of my other videos, and I'll link it within this video, is how I set my Alabama rigs up. So I am going to start incorporating, as I alluded to in that video, as to how I start stepping up my bait sizes. I'll start incorporating the larger baits into the school, or into the Alabama rig school, as we go. And as we get more and more into March, as that water starts warming versus really just kind of stagnating there in that mid 40s, you'll really start seeing me upsize a lot of these swim baits. So leaving the 2 and 3 inch sizes on the actual hooked baits for more of your 4 and 5 inch. I may end up trying to play with some of the 6 inch baits, but we'll see on that. If I get into a 6 inch bait, it's almost like I'd rather just throw it on a dedicated swim bait versus an Alabama rig, but we'll see. But the Alabama rig is definitely going to be still on the deck, leaving winter, going straight into the pre-spawn. Excellent bait, especially for schooling fish, and this time of year they are trying to get as much energy as they can possibly consume to be able to get ready for the spawn itself, and try to get those eggs fully developed and ready for the spawn. So Alabama rig is definitely one of those baits on the boat at that point in time. Bait number 2 is the Huddleston. This is the 8 inch Huddleston Deluxe Trout. This is actually in the AU color, and this one's got all the modifications that I made to it. So the Butch Brown rig on the hook. But, looking for a big bite in that cold water, that vortex tail, or like the, that unique, I guess, boot style tail that the Huddleston has, is just iconic with cold water, that it works so well. So I'm really looking forward to, finally getting out on the water. I know that we had spoken a couple of months ago that I was planning on doing it this winter, but with the boat being in the shop, I really didn't get to do as much winter fishing as I'd hoped. So hopefully moving forward, we'll get the Huddleston out there and we'll catch a giant on it. So that's the Huddleston. All right, so now let's, I was debating on doing this bait or not, but I'll go ahead and do this one. This bait. All right, so what this is, and for anyone that doesn't know what this is a Huddleston shad, a Hud shad, I think is actually what a lot of people call it. It's a little 4-inch shad bait that the Huddleston Company and Ken Huddleston developed. I plan on using this with forward-facing sonar. So putting this on probably a bait caster. This is a new bait for me, so it's going to be a trial system. I'm planning on using this on a little, on a bait caster, probably 12-pound test. Copolymer is probably what I'm going to do. 12-pound test copolymer, and I am going to, you know, just go searching and maybe snipe some fish using the forward-facing sonar, the live scope technology. But I mean, you can kind of just see as to how easy it's going to be for this little bait to swim. And I'm really interested to see how this works. I've never used this bait, like I said, and we'll see. I haven't actually heard anybody talk about it either, so it's either everybody's keeping it under wraps or everybody's tried it and it doesn't work that well. But given the profile, given what it looks like, I think this little bait is going to wear them out. And it's 4 inches. It's nowhere near, you know, this is the Huddleston Deluxe Trout compared to the Hud Shad. So as you can kind of see, it's a very, very small bait. And I think largemouth, smallmouth, spots, anything can get that in their mouth. And it comes stocked with a jig hook. I don't know how heavy it is right off the top of my head, but honestly, I'm just going to throw it on my jig rod, bait caster jig rod. And we'll see what happens, but you'll be along for the ride. But I think that is going to be a dynamite little forward-facing sonar bait. All right, so now we are getting more so into the pre-spawn, where, at least where I live, let's say kind of getting into the March and mid-March, water's getting up around 50. Okay, we get up around 50, and this is when I'm really going to start adding in a lot of the Magdraft. And as you can tell, I'm throwing a lot of soft baits going into the pre-spawn. I love my hard baits. I really love throwing a hard bait, and I know for a fact I'll be throwing a hard bait a lot. It's just, if I had to pick which bait I think would give you the higher probability of catching a bass right now, I think that the soft bait will have that higher probability right now, especially just because the water's so much cooler. So the first one, and everyone knows this bait, and I'm going to leave them in their packaging, it's the Magdraft. I have two different colors here. I have the albino pearl and then the whiteback shad. Phenomenal baits. These are the 8 inches. I plan on throwing these a lot here this pre-spawn, you know, and we'll get into like locations here in just a little bit, but phenomenal baits. I've caught plenty of fish on a Magdraft, and they're a really good bait for the, I mean, honestly, in the world of swim baits, I would say they're kind of, I wouldn't say inexpensive, but they're definitely not the most expensive bait that you can buy on the market. And they're pretty readily available. They're not that difficult to find. Usually if you go into any local tackle shop, you can find a set of Magdrafts. So there's the 8-inch Magdraft. Now, I didn't really talk about this as much during my fall to winter big bait selection, but I will mention it here that I do have the 6-inch Magdraft also. This is called Brownie, and then this one is called the MB Gizzard. Honestly, I think the MB Gizzard is probably the most trout, natural looking, soft swim bait that Megabass makes, at least that color. But, you know, I'll be using these two. Now the difference, and why would I choose one over the other, is going to be a little bit of different things, depending on the lake. For one, if I have trout in the lake, 9 times out of 10, I'll take the 8-inch. And that's just because I'm trying to match the hatch of a trout, not so much trying to match a shad. The lake that I plan on targeting a lot with that 8-inch does have trout in it, and it does have a lot of large fish in it. So I believe that 8-inch is going to be thrown more there. However, if you've got more of a threadfin population, not so much of a gizzard population, or you don't get a lot of trout stocks, that 6-inch would definitely probably be a good trial bait. But at the same time, it's going to be, it would be worthwhile to try an 8-inch because you're going to pull more fish. So if you do have a lake that has some good sized fish in it, you're going to pull the bigger fish with the bigger bait. It's just kind of how it works. Another tip that I want to give is, like, I've done all these different tools and things that you take with you, but definitely would recommend taking these when you go, especially if you're throwing a lot of soft baits. These are Tungsten Nails. You know, as you can tell, this is Bass Pro Shop. This is a working class 0 tungsten weight, just a tungsten nail weight. And I would also recommend you use tungsten and not lead. So in my experience, if you use lead, sometimes it can have a weird reaction, a chemical reaction with the plastisol, or the soft plastic that these big soft baits are made out of. And if it has that reaction with it, what it will actually do is turn your bait like a brown or a yellow color surrounding where that lead was inserted into the bait. It completely discolors the bait. So that would be my one recommendation. If you do end up using lead weights, which I personally do, I don't fish, honestly, a 6-inch without a nail weight in it. I always put a nail weight in a 6-inch. My fish typically are deeper here. I live on highland reservoirs. That's what I fish. So very rarely are my fish in, 2 to 3 foot water, and it being so cold. So what I will do is I'll put that tungsten nail weight, or prior to getting tungsten, I used lead. So that's how you see I have the experience with that, the lead reacting to the soft plastic. But what you do, and I'll show you real quick on this one as to how to do this. You'll take your soft plastic, your soft bait, you'll pull your hook, you'll take your soft Magdraft. Okay, this is how it comes stock. Just pull your hook off, and what you'll do is you'll find your belly slot. You'll find the belly slot. What you're going to do is you'll find the magnet, and what you want to do is you want to slide that nail weight about right through here, right below the fin, but kind of right above the magnet. What that does is that's going to allow you to have, it's going to give it a little bit more weight, and it's going to let that Magdraft run deeper. So if you are like me and you have deeper fish, or you live on a body of water that is, just cliff walls, it's easy to find 100 foot deep somewhere, and your fish tend to be and stay deep, adding that little nail weight to give that bait a little bit of an extra weight to keep it down. Because if you've ever fished a Magdraft, they tend to rise. They run around, 3 to 6 foot deep. Okay, well, for me, the biggest end of my fish, I just like it running deeper. I feel like I'm getting in there with the bigger fish. So that little bit of nail weight is a whole lot more beneficial to help you there. But like I said, you can pick up the Tungsten Nails for like $4 or $5, and you get a 10-pack. It helps a lot to keep that bait down. So just a little tip right there. All right, so that takes care of the Magdraft. Now here's another bait that I'm going to experiment with this year. And this is, I've had this bait, but I've not really fully utilized it. But I plan on really trying to work it into my Swimbait arsenal this year. It's the Working Class 0 Citizen. So I have 2 different Citizens here. This is the Working Class 0 7-inch and 6-inch Citizen. I have both. So this is the 7, and I'll use it for most of the demonstration just because it's a little bit easier to see. But as you can tell, it looks just like a shad. It mimics a baby bass. It mimics just about anything. And as you can also tell, look at how soft. That thing is going to be able to move water no matter how cold it is. But I'm going to rig, so it comes as a 2-pack. I really like this bait, and Mike Gilbert did a really good job of designing this, because what it has in it, I think it's called the Chaos Chamber. But when this bait collapses, there's a giant air pocket in between it. or in the middle. And I mean, for me, what I'm going to do, and I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to run one the way that Mike Gilbert designed it, with a weedless beast hook, the owner beast. The other one that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to run it as a line through. So I'm going to make another video on how I'm going to do this, but I ran across a video on YouTube with some Canadian fishermen, and they had worked up a rigging system on how to do a line through on a working class zero citizen, and I really liked it. The one thing that I wanted to be able to do was to be able to get it deeper, though. Like I said, because of where I live with these highland reservoirs, these fish run deeper. So what I'm wanting to do is I'm going to rig this thing up and add weight to it, and I've got a couple of different ideas as to how I'm going to get the extra weight, but this is definitely going to be in the arsenal this year. Like I said, line through and as a weedless. It just depends on how I'm fishing. If I'm fishing around a ton of trees and a ton of laydowns, definitely going to utilize the beast, and if not, I will run it as a line through. But phenomenal bait, really like them. Like I said, super soft, and they swim great. Have no issues with any of that. Because they are soft, they may end up tearing a little bit more frequently, and like I said, they are a little bit higher than you know, your Magdraft, but they are 100% made in America too, so you are getting both of those. And then here's just a 6-inch and kind of like it looks like a sight flash, the Kitech sight flash color. So there's the working class zero citizen, and I will follow up on how I'm planning on doing that line through method. I really just want to take a little bit of you know, of the fishing season to see as to how it works and see if I like it and if I'd recommend it. But I'll give it a try, and I'll let everyone know and follow up with you as to how I like it and if it works well. All right, so now we've pretty well made it through the soft baits. Last up is going to be the hard baits. So as everyone knows, during the springtime, everyone knows the red crankbait becomes king. The red square bill, the red DT6, really just about any red crankbait. But honestly, the DT6, the shad wrap in a crawdad color, the Strike King KVD, square bills, all of those. So what I'm going to do is do a lot of crankdowns. I do have another bait or two kind of that I'm prototyping right now, and I'll follow up with you all if I like how they end up. But I am prototyping some baits that I'm really looking forward to showing you all later in this year after I can kind of get it squared away. But this is the big one so far, and this is the Jethro Crankdown. As you can tell, this is the 6-inch Jethro body, and it's a square bill crankdown. I've had this on the live scope go down to at least 10 feet. I'm pretty sure I can get it down to 12 if I kneel and crank, as well as I could probably get it even deeper if I add some lead wire to it to try to suspend it, but I can get it pretty deep. So, and it gets down there and it does get fish. I've had so many fish interaction with it, but they're really interested in it, and I'm looking forward to really trialing it a lot this pre-spawn. Honestly, you're probably going to be seeing me throw a crank down a whole lot more than what you might even see me throwing a glide, just because I'm really wanting to trial these crankdowns out, and it just opens up another area of the water column. We'll get into that here in a little bit when we get into where I'm planning on focusing with. I'm getting ahead of myself. And then lastly, as we kind of get ready to go to the spawn, because the fish should be the shallowest at that point, the glide's coming back. You know, this is the 6-inch Jethro. This is in bone. Released this color at the end of last year, I believe, and this is the new bone color. So this is the 6-inch, and then this color was released this past week. This is, and he doesn't have a tail right now, but this is the color. So this is the Jethro in the equivalent of LG bone. As everyone knows, the Mega Bass 110 or Vision 110 in LG bone. This is a glide bait basically in LG bone. Blue back, and then you've got your chartreuse belly. And this is something that I've been working on as to getting a transparent belly on the glide baits. This is a 100% resin bait, and it does have a transparent belly on the body. So I'm really looking forward to trying this out, you know, especially on the jerkbait fish. As we get into the March, the jerkbait will come really hard in our area, and it's just a phenomenal bait. But that's going to be what I take instead of a jerkbait. I just want to upsize, and we'll see how it does. But this is my equivalent to that LG bone color, the blue back, transparent, and then the chartreuse on the belly. So, all right, now let's talk about the where are we going on the lake. So, depending on which lake I am, it's hard for everyone to not fish history. We all have our favorite locations on the lake. So one thing I learned, especially the last time I was able to take the boat out, was fishing the conditions is your #1 priority. Ignore your history. I'd never fished the spot that I ended up fishing. Caught 3 fish within basically an hour, had a little over 8 pounds out of 3 smallmouth. And it was a great day, you know, but fished the conditions. So as we go into pre-spawn, there's going to be a couple of things that I'm looking for. I like to throw big swim baits. There's no question there, you know. So with that, I'm also thinking about where are the bass going. That is my #1 question. Where are they going? They're going to spawning flats. They're planning on spawning in April, into March, somewhere through April in our area. And then they will, you know, work their way back out. Okay, so we're on the way in right now. So your points is going to be the big one. Well, really, there's going to be 2 big ones: points and channel swings. The reason I say that, you have deep water access on both. Bass, if we do get a weird cold front, we get a ton of rain, we get something like that, they can easily dive into deeper water and feel secure. Also, big bass tend to feel better and more secure around deep water. So that's #1. #2 is the channel swings. Channel swings, you know, you've got all that current that comes over the historic old riverbed. And I'm speaking mainly highland reservoirs here because that is all I really have to base my knowledge on. That's my fisheries that I fish regularly. I've been on maybe a couple others, but I don't have enough experience there to really give you my opinion on lowland or river systems. So going back on those channel swing banks, I will parallel those banks and keep it pretty tight. There may be a couple instances where I do back the boat off if I'm wanting to throw the Huddleston on it and try to stair step it down those little cliffs. And that, I'm going to give that a try this year. I haven't done that before. And my big one with the Huddleston is the points and these big long flats. What you're looking for is the drop. So as you have a flat, the flat will kind of come out. It will be slowly tapering down. You know, it'll be like, let's say it goes from 10 to 15 feet and it's like over 10 to 20 yards and it's just sitting right in that. And then you have a drop. Okay, well, it drops 10 feet. That's where the bass will sit. It's that really quick drop. They will sit there and then they'll move up on the flat and feed, and then they'll move back out and back and forth. And that's just how they'll do until they're ready to spawn. And then they'll move up, spawn, do their business, and then move back out. And they're able to do that, and they're relatively able to stay in the same spot all the time. They don't have to exert tons and tons of energy. Now, with that being said, given that we are still kind of on the winter to pre-spawn transition versus just full-blown pre-spawn right now, we're still getting trout stocks in our local lakes. So my thinking is also, if I have a big bass and he's getting a free meal of a big trout that's, you know, anywhere from 6 to 12 inches, he's going to take it. So if you know where trout stocks are being done in your lake, you find that ramp, and I would say cover the entire surrounding area. The entire area. He could be right at the ramp, and he could be on the closest point. He could be on the flat next to where they're dropping them in at the ramp. He could be on the big tree limb, the big stump, but he will be near where the food's at. And if he knows that they've rung the dinner bell and the trout are getting dumped, he's going to be nearby. Well, really, I guess we're looking for she'll be nearby because the females are going to weigh more this time of year. But so that's my game plan as far as the early winter going into the pre-spawn. Now, with that being said, there is the two baits that I will use with the forward-facing sonar. The A-rig and the little Hud shad. So I'm really excited about this, as y'all can tell. But this little thing, I'm just envisioning a monster. So looking forward to this. And then everyone knows the power of the A-rig this time of year. So that's my game plan there. I probably will even throw the Huddleston at some of these fish. I'm not intimidated to do that. And I think just throwing a Huddleston, it's a big natural meal. Why not? So I've got a couple of baits to throw at those forward-facing sonar live scope fish and try that out, as well as even the Crankdown and the Glide. I'm not opposed to trying any of it. I just have to be really careful to where I don't over spook my fish, if that makes sense, because a big bait will pull a big fish, but that does not mean that every big fish that you pull you'll catch. So I don't want to just go and pull all of my fish off of my spot when I could be taking that little Hud shad or the A-rig and, you know, get a quick limit, and then, okay, I'm gonna fire the big 8-inch Hud out there and see if I can get an 8 or a 9. Definitely that's the game plan. So moving on into pre-spawn, as we get closer into it, you know, that's when I'm probably going to start transitioning a little bit more to looking at the flats, mainly using those channel swings, because those channel swings, those bass will use as their little highway to and from the flat. So that's my game plan there, and then just basically follow the bass. And as you all can tell, I'm planning on fishing a bunch of moving baits. I do not have a single bottom hopping bait on. I mean, I know a jig will catch fish this time of year. I know a drop shot will, Deminky rig. I know all those baits will catch really nice fish this time of year. However, for me, I really want to try to throw and target with the big baits. Win, lose, or draw, it's going to be one of those kind of deals. It may be a 2-fish day, but if it's the right 2 fish, I'm fine with it. You know, if it's 1.5 pound spots, well, it is what it is. I'll weigh in 3 pounds total. Then again, it could be 2 8s and I weigh in 16. So, who knows? Hopeful dreams, I guess. The key here is I'm wanting to basically take the same baits that work year in, year out in the pre-spawn, a Swimbait, a crankbait, you know, an Alabama rig, of course, a jig, you know, and I know that I mentioned a jig and I don't have a jig here, but here's what I'm getting at. Oversized crankbait, you know, oversized swim baits, not your typical finesse swim baits. And there's your jig. I'm bottom crawling it just like you would drag a jig. So same basic principles. All I'm doing is I'm incorporating a big bait in instead of using a conventional bait. We'll see how it goes. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I'm ready for the pre-spawn, but I really want to be able to catch a big fish this year on a big bait. That 6.5 has had me basically ready to go back out every day. So I'm looking forward to it. And we have our upcoming TNCBA, Tennessee Christian Bass Anglers Fishing Tournaments #2. I actually missed #1 because the boat was in the shop, but Lord willing, I'm going to be out there for #2, and we'll be up at Watauga Lake Saturday. So if anyone's interested in fishing, you know, if you have any interest there, drop a comment and I'll try to get you hooked up with or connected with the tournament committee and our president. But I appreciate y'all's time. Thank y'all for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those down below. more than happy and would love to answer any questions, as well as hear your experience, because there's definitely some swim baiters out there that have far more experience with some of these different baits than I do. I'd love to hear your experience. I'd also would love it if anyone's got a lot of experience with crankdowns in the springtime or just year round. I'd love to hear your experience, because this is one area that I find fascinating right now. I love to throw a crankbait, so this is really just an upsized crankbait, so I'm really looking forward to this. So if you don't care, leave me some comments or maybe some advice or some of your suggestions for throwing a crankdown all year round. But I really appreciate everyone's time. If you haven't, please hit that thumbs up if you've enjoyed today's video, and please hit that little subscribe button and the little notification bell. What that does is it helps us grow our channel, it helps us reach far more people, and it just helps us grow. And I really appreciate everyone taking some time, and I'll see you on the next video, and hopefully we'll be out on the water for the next one. I'll see you all later in the next video.